Episode 12 of the podcast is about encouraging what you do want a dog to do. I'm separating that out into two categories. One of them is about talking to a dog about what we're doing, and the second category is using reward markers to indicate when they're correct. This is the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, and a certified professional dog trainer. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. I am going to apologize for the sound quality on this next segment. I tried recording it multiple times, finally got a good recording and found that my mic wasn't hooked up, so it's not through the nice mic, but I finally got the recording right without a coughing fit, so I was pretty pleased. I apologize for this segment being kind of sloppy. I like to talk to dogs about what I'm doing because so much of grooming is multiple tools. We're doing stuff above them, around them, below them. We talked about the posable action figure in another episode, but we're returning to that here because that's my model. I want them to be part of this process, but not having to be actively acting on it. Right? So for trainers who are using things like nose targeting and chin targeting and foot targeting and stuff, that's more of an active response, like, oh, I am actively doing something as part of cooperating with my own care. But grooming is an endurance run, and those things don't hold up well in a grooming setting. Or maybe they do, but only for, okay, now we're going to do nose targeting while I trim your back nails, right? But not for the endurance run that's grooming. So the posable action figure is teaching a dog to be relaxed while we do stuff to them, which is a little bit different. It's not necessarily doing stuff with them. It's kind of doing stuff to them. But I want you to think about the things that we name are important because we're having a conversation with them and we're trying to keep them comfortable. We're always trying to avoid the fear response. First of all, because it's kinder. We don't want dogs to be afraid. But second, because we know that once you become afraid, your body, adrenaline sparks, your body has a physical reaction once something scares you or startles you. So we want to avoid that. We want to take their comfort zone and expand on it. And teaching them about what we're doing, for a lot of dogs, takes the mystery out of what we're doing. So the first part of that posable action figure is a dog who's loosey-goosey, right? A dog who can loosen up for us. And the way I test that out is I don't want a dog to be stiff and rigid. We know that that's often a signal that they are stressed out. And sometimes it's a warning signal that I am stiff and rigid and, oh my God, she's still coming at me and I'm stiff and I'm rigid and I'm looking at you and you're still coming at me and I'm going to spring, right? We want them to be loose. And the other reason why we want them to be kind of loose is because that's telling us that they're relaxed. Not just that they're not going to spring, but they are actually relaxing. This is cooperative. Being a posable action figure is also cooperative. It's just not as exhausting as nose targeting or chin targeting or foot targeting, And groomers, you might not know what that is, but that's when you ask a dog to place their chin on something and remain there, or place their nose against something and keep it in contact with the thing, whether it be like a stick or a lid, but in grooming, I find that it's not real practical. So trainers, if you are working on chin targeting or nose targeting or having a dog put their foot out for you, fade it out as time goes on so that they aren't relying on that in a grooming situation where it's not real practical. So anyway, the posable action figure, I don't want to get too far off the story, right? The posable action figure is be loose and relaxed. I need to reposition you. I'm going to be using equipment on you. Some things are going to be loud. So the kind of vocabulary that we build around that I actually use the words loosen up or relax. And if an owner is using that word at home or asking for relax, like relax, that's not helpful. I might pick something else. But by doing that, I'm getting them used to the idea that I say this word while I'm gently massaging into them and getting a little bit of movement. It's almost like slow dancing. Like I want you to think about like you press a little bit and they yield to your touch and they just wiggle a little. That's what I consider relaxed or loosened up to be a posable action figure. I don't necessarily want them lying down. Like grooming is mostly standing up. I let dogs sit when there's parts that I can do that for, but so much of grooming is standing up. So they can't be totally loose or they'll fall over. Now, the kind of things that I name, one of those big important ones is I'll name, are you ready? And what I'm looking for, so let's give an example. It makes it more real for you. If I'm holding a foot and that dog in the past has been nervous about nails, I'll say, are you ready? And then I loosen my grip, give them the chance to pull away, because that's how you indicate that you're not ready. And a dog that does not pull away, that's very telling. Now we have a communication where I can say, are you ready? And open my thumb from my grip, right? Give them the option to pull away. And if they don't, then I can grip again and touch the toenail, which actually, if you're doing nails, those of you who are not groomers might not know this, but when you're trimming a nail, a firmer grip on the toenail for most dogs is more comfortable. Like it lessens some of the vibration when you snap off the edge of a toenail with a clipper, or if you're using a grinder, it lessens the vibrations from that. So in my experience, I have found that most dogs are much more comfortable with it if you have a firm hold. So it's not about not holding them firmly, it's about giving them the chance to back out before you do. And if a dog starts to wiggle, I loosen it up and we start over. So are you ready is an important part of our communication so that we can get a dog to indicate that, yeah, I am ready. And I can't tell you how many owners have said, he's never going to let you do it. Oh my God, you just showed him nail clippers and told him you're going to pick up his toe, and then you held him and let go, and he moved away, and he's never going to let you. But they do. I know it sounds crazy, but they do, because we're telling them, are you ready? And only proceeding when they're calm. Because actually, nail trimming doesn't hurt. Can everyone just chant that with me for a minute? Nail trimming doesn't hurt. Unless they have a broken toe or an injury, like nail trimming doesn't hurt. It's just a nail trim, right? It can hurt. I mean, if you trim too short, but I've known plenty of dogs that don't worry about that. That doesn't become a lifelong problem. The dogs it becomes a lifelong problem for are often the ones who got startled while they were struggling and had a toenail trimmed too short, right? Most groomers aren't trimming toenails too short on dogs who are remaining perfectly still. So when we're telling them, are you ready? Back to the plot, right? The posable action figure. We're telling them, are you ready? That's a key component to the kind of things we need to communicate with them. Now, when I'm naming tools, I tell them things like brush, clippers, scissors, comb, dryer. I'm naming all sorts of things. It might be grooming loop, because if you're not a groomer, you might not know, but the grooming arm comes up and there's a grooming loop that we put over their head, which, by the way, most dogs will lean into just a little bit because I think they're trying to keep their balance. Imagine you were up on a pedestal and somebody gave you a railing to hold on to, right? Like without that railing, you might be wondering if you're going to fall. So I do find that a lot of dogs like the grooming loop. I don't want them leaning in hard, but I think for some of them, they use it to steady themselves a little. And I name the grooming loop because I'm putting it over their head. I'm putting it on, taking it off, picking them up, right? So when we start talking about all of our tools, be aware that you just want them to be familiar with, hey, this is a brush. And next part is naming the body parts. This is a brush on your shoulder, on your neck, on your ear, on your head, on your foot, on your hock. It depends on the dog how much detail you want to get into for the body parts. But the difference between I'm going to touch your ear or I'm going to touch your cheek, for a dog who is worried about having their ears touched or has an ear infection, they can relax because they realize that you're touching their cheek and that's not their ear, right? Like instead of being worried the whole time that they're coming at the front of my body, I find the more specific I am around the area that they're worried about, the more specific I am, the more they can let their guard down. Like, oh, well, she's just touching near my eye and above my eyebrow and on my cheek and on my neck. And she'll tell me when it's time for ear. And ear is going to be, are you ready? And lift up the ear, right? So with the tools, which, basically every part of a dog's body is going to be touched with multiple tools. Whether that be water, we're going to use water and shampoo, our liquid tools. right? So we're going to use water and shampoo and conditioners and lots and lots and lots of touching because grooming is a touch fest. We're all over that dog. We're in their mouth, pulling the corner of their mouth so that we can trim up the hairs along the edge of their lip. I mean, we're all over the place on that dog. We need to have a little bit of a discussion about what we're doing. So I also teach them loud noise, and I use loud noise to be pretty much anything that makes a noise. And I'll practice that with the dryer, with my clipper vac, with my clippers, even the little trimmers, which are a little bit different than your regular clipper. They're a little bit quieter, not by much. I have a nice pair of clippers that aren't too loud, but the clipper vac and the dryer and anything that's going to make a loud noise, I teach them loud noise. Because the startle response is often something that we have to work with. But if they know a loud noise is coming, ready? Loud noise. And I'll usually show them, dryer. Like I put the hose up in front of them, dryer, loud noise, here it comes, boom, and turn on the dryer. Just knowing it's going to happen, we can often prevent the fear and the startle response. Oh, yes, dryer, got it, right? So you're talking to them in a way that's consistent and naming and explaining what we're doing to them, what we're doing it with. If we're lifting a body part, that's another one. Like, okay, lifting this foot, lifting your tail, lifting your ear, moving along your side. I want you to stand, lift it onto your belly. So naming what we're doing with them and being consistent about it. And it's not about having a complete conversation, right? We don't need to talk it out like we're having a conversation with another person. But those key words are things that they pick up on, and they pick up on them very quickly. I have found that if I say one thing, like if I say, all right, brush, and then pick up the scissors, they look at me like, whoa, Chrissy's lost her mind. That's not a brush, right? Like I wouldn't expect them to indicate to me that they understand what all these things are, but they do definitely show me a response if I say the wrong word or if I change my mind and pick up the wrong thing. So they do catch on to it, right? Proof's in the pudding. They catch on to it. And it helps us to work with them. But I want you to think about it's almost like talking to their owner while you're working. Like, okay, we're going to pick up this foot. I don't know if you've ever worked with owners in the room. I'm a house call groomer. My owners are in the room and watching. So when I'm talking to an owner who is very, very nervous about their dog, because some of my owners are, I'm able to tell them, okay, now I'm going to pick up his tail, and I'm going to work under his tail. Okay, now we're going to work around the bum with the clipper, bum with the clipper. Are you ready? Here it goes. Good job, right? So when we're talking to them, it can be very, very small words, easy to figure out for them. It's not about saying, okay, I'm going to pick up your tail and everything's going to be good. It's not just the tone of voice, right? Tone of voice is important, but to actually start naming those things. So that's part of our communication, is talking to them about what we are doing. If you're enjoying my podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. How can we tell a dog that they are correct? I talk a lot about building good behaviors and encouraging good behaviors, and to do that, we need a way to tell them that you are doing well. You got it. You nailed it. This is great, right? And one of the ways that we can do that is to use reward markers. So what a reward marker is that we're trying to bridge the gap between what a dog does and the result of being good or playing along with the people who are doing crazy grooming things, right? So we're trying to help them understand that what they did is something worthwhile, something to continue doing, and something that we liked, that we appreciated, okay? So it's often called a bridge. So that's why I'm using the example of bridging the gap, right? It's a bridge. It connects the behavior to the result or the reward. So you may be familiar with clicker training. So let me get into that one first. It's a very common training method. I used it for a long time. And what that is the sound of a clicker has been paired with a reward. And in dog training, that's usually a food reward. I'm going to say in dog training because there are lots and lots and lots of trainers using clickers in a variety of ways with a variety of species. But For most dog training, it's click, treat, until the sound of the click literally means the treat is coming. And the dog has that visceral response that their stomach starts thinking, ah, I heard the click and this is delicious, right? So remember Pavlov, right? Dogs' mouths are salivating just by hearing the bell that means that food's coming. So click, then treat, click, treat. So it can be used to the moment a dog has done something correctly. Like let's say I pick up a foot and I get it all set up and I snip that toenail and they did it right and I click and give them a cookie for it, right? So that's the way you would tell a dog, that was perfect. That earned you a cookie. You let me trim your nail. The problem is that clickers can be very hard to use in a grooming setting. And we talked about this in the episode about food. And I believe we talked about it a couple of times in other episodes too, but we're already using two hands. So a groomer who's holding a foot and a nail clipper, or who is holding a dog's still and holding their, maybe combing their fur up while we're using scissors, we're already using two hands. So often adding a clicker is tedious and hard. And having an assistant there to do clicking sometimes is available to a groomer, but not always. So trainers, if you're working toward a dog being good in a grooming shop, I want you to bring an awareness to that if you're using a clicker, we're going to fade it out so that in a grooming shop setting where a clicker might not work, we still have a behavior that is awesome. Because I know you're doing a great work and you've got a clicker going. That's good. Sometimes that's the beginning of how we're going to catch it. But clickers in the grooming setting can be hard. In fact, sometimes we're using more than just two hands. I cannot tell you how often I have a hand on the dog and a hand on a tool and my leg up on the table supporting their body weight on my knee. Like sometimes we are all out yoga pose. Like we're in weird positions. Like the idea of adding another tool is just way too much. But we also talked about how food can be a little bit dangerous in a grooming setting. They're in a room full of dogs. Those dogs might be in crates, but the thing is in a grooming setting, we don't really necessarily know if the other dogs around us or the dog on the table has food resource issues or food guarding. We don't really know if that dog's going to become aggressive about food or if the next dog on our table is going to become aggressive with the other dogs in the room and lunging at other dogs in the room just because there's the smell of peanut butter in the air. So treats can be difficult in a grooming setting. Now keep in mind, in good clicker training, the click means treat. So if you're using a clicker and not giving treats, your learner is very frustrated, right? That's like saying, hey, I'm going to give you chocolate and not doing it. Keep telling me you're going to give me chocolate. I expect chocolate. I'm going to become a frustrated learner. So in a dog's point of view, like, you just clicked me and I get nothing. I hate this game, right? So it's not necessarily a great choice in the grooming setting, but working toward being in a grooming setting, it's an excellent choice. And we also talked about operant conditioning, but that's an example of using operant conditioning. Clicker training uses operant conditioning, but operant conditioning is not clicker training. And I find that that's often misunderstood. So let me explain that differently. Operant conditioning, think of that as vehicles that drive on land. All right. And clicker training may be sedans, like cars, right? Other types of operant conditioning could be trucks, right? Like there's lots of ways to use operant conditioning and using like your dog, your learner, your animal does something that then signals you have done it right and something good happens for you. That's operant conditioning, right? That they have to actually do something. Their behavior operates the reward. So clicker training is a type of that, but it does not necessarily mean that it's the only way to use operant conditioning. So it's not a great choice for the grooming room, but it's a great choice for teaching grooming behaviors as long as you're aware that that'll be faded out later. Okay? So I'm going to move on with reward markers and say that I'm a SATS bridge and target trainer, and that's Casey Cover. I will link to her stuff probably on the Fact Fighting Friday, which I've been doing on the Instagram posts and the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. But bridge and target training, she uses a bridge that is not paired with food specifically. Now, that means that it's paired with a variety of rewards. We're not going to frustrate a dog if we're not using food. We're not going to get our learner frustrated. But we also are pairing it with rewards in a different way. We're telling the dog that socially, like, remember, these are social creatures, you just got my approval. The thing you just did was remarkably good. And for dogs, that can be very motivating in and of itself. Okay. I mean, we don't always need to use food. There are plenty of times, especially when we can't. Um, I actually learned to not use food so much in my training because I had a dog who didn't find it rewarding. She'd spit them out. She didn't care. So I had to think outside the box, which was part of how I found this method. So food is a great reward, not the only reward we have available to us. So the bridge isn't necessarily paired with food, and it's not a clicker, which also for grooming setting is a little bit easier to use. Um, Now, the other part of SATS training, oh, here's one of my favorites, is that there's something called an intermediate bridge. And what that means is you are doing well, but you're not done yet, right? So the ings, you are sitting, you are standing, you are allowing me to clean your ear. So while ear cleaning is happening, the dog is hearing the sound that means you are doing well. Continue what you're doing. It's the way I teach my dog owners when I'm doing training with them for any sort of training we're doing. This is pretty much my go-to tool. The intermediate bridge, if it were a physical tool, they'd have to pry it out of my cold, dead hand. I don't think I'm ever going to go without it. But so the sounds that I'm using when I use her method of bridge and target training with dogs, and again, we're being species specific because I'd use a different sound if I were using it with an animal that didn't like that sound or didn't relate to that, right? But with dogs, the sound that I am using is I'm using the letter D. So let me give you some basic training examples. If I ask my dog to sit, the moment he sits, D. Oh my God, who's my good boy? You throw the ball, play with the squeaky, pet him on the head, whatever it is that that animal finds as a reward. I have a variety of rewards to choose from. Now, if I ask my dog to come to me, so my dog is across the field and I say, come, while they're running toward me, in many training scenarios, there's not a whole lot that was said in that point. So, but in SATS training, we use the intermediate bridge. So while my dog is running toward me, he's hearing D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D until he completes it, and then he hears D. Oh my God, who's my good little guy, right? The encouragement is there, which is part of learning, right? Instead of hearing nothing, he's hearing lots of encouragement. Because that sound means continue what you're doing. We find that animals think a little bit more about what is it I'm doing right now that I'm getting this approval for. I'm getting this information. Another example, if I ask my dog to stay, stay. D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D D. Who's a good dog? Oh my God, you stayed. That was great. And all those other things, the fluffy wuffy terms that we do. More tech talk, fluffy wuffy terms. But the information is the same if they're running to me, if they're staying, if they're being good while I'm cleaning an ear. Like, okay, and I got my finger in their ear with a wet cotton ball, and I'm like dee 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 while the dog is being good. Dee 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 dee. Good boy. Oh my God, it was so good, right? I use it a lot when I'm grooming with dogs who need that little bit of a confidence, that little bit of extra, how do I know I'm doing it right? And the sound is easy to use while you're grooming. I mean, sometimes people say, oh, it's great because you always have your voice. No, I don't always have my voice. The podcast is a day late today because yesterday was coughing fits. So yesterday I didn't have much of a voice. So it's not because you always have your voice, but as a tool that can be easily accessible while you are grooming or while you are working with your own dog on something that takes two hands, you don't have an extra tool, you might not be able to use treats. Maybe you don't even have treats with you, but you found yourself out in the park and you need to do something. To have a way to say you are doing well and you're doing great and I approve of what you are doing for our little social creatures, that's really, really important. I find that a lot of dogs, so a little bit of tech talk for the trainers, a lot of dogs treat these sounds as a secondary reinforcer. That on its own is a good reinforcer. Primary reinforcers being things like food, food, water, secondary reinforcers being things like tennis balls and play, right? So they actually respond really well to some of these sounds. But keep in mind that if we want to communicate to a dog that we want to encourage the good behavior and we're building what we want, some of this communication can be things like reward markers. So I will post that on the Fact Finding Friday on the Creating Great Grooming Dogs webpage. Hopefully you guys find that on, not the webpage, the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. And hopefully you guys will ask me some questions about it. I'm pretty passionate about all of this, and I don't get too many questions. I don't know. It's the 12th podcast. Come on, guys, ask questions. I'd love, love, love to expand on anything you guys want to know more about. So have a nice week and stay curious. If you'd like to talk to me, you can find me through my grooming and training business, happycrittersdogtraining.com, my email, chrissy@happycritters.net, and through the Creating Great Grooming Dogs Facebook page. And we have these awesome devices in our pockets that allow us to do live video with each other. I can help you with the dog on your table. We can set up live lessons, and you may be surprised at how much we can get accomplished together via video. I'm also happy to come to you if you're near my area in southern New Hampshire.